Okay, well, I'm Revd David Frank Williams. People who know me now call me Frank because I thought it was a lot simpler. I am the former minister of the North Lancs group of Unitarian and Free Christian churches, which comprised the churches of Chorley, Preston and Lancaster, with a visiting chaplaincy at the University of Lancaster. The Preston congregation is about 300 years old and had been in its time very influential, I gather. Many mayors were from its congregation, and the great and the good used to line up in their carriages outside on Church Street, so I was told. But by the time of my arrival, the whole fortunes had changed, as the whole face of religion has changed. And the reason why I was minister to 3 churches was the attempt on the part of our movement to give some ministerial oversight to falling congregations and struggling congregations financially, with also a dwindling band of men coming forward, or women, because we also accept women ministers and have done for many, many years. In fact, we may be the first church to have taken on women ministers. So it was a difficult situation, and one we attempted to deal with in our customary rational, reasonable way, because that's the basis of the Unitarian approach. We don't take external authorities, we submit to the Spirit and the power of reason in religion, which puts us at odds very often with other churches that come across wanting the revelation to be accepted, which historically has been challenged. However, as I say, I came to minister to the 3 churches in difficult financial and personal times, and the fact that we were having difficulty was recognised by the church wanting to think of selling or adapting the whole site to a housing association, where we could do some lasting social good, which is another strong strand of Unitarianism. At the same time, perhaps reduce the overheads involved in having a large church, redundant largely, a schoolroom, which is the gymnasium and boxing room. I forget how large the grounds were, plus garden, for a situation that would rescue us in part financially and so on. Well, we didn't have the skills, we didn't have the capacities, the fact that the church had gained a listed building site made it more difficult. So the top point was we ended up selling the whole site to Preston Corporation, who wanted to redevelop that whole area, and we moved as a worshipping group to the benevolence and generosity of the Friends Meeting House on St George's Road, where we carried on. Leaving the old church was a sad day. I find it hard to remember all the things we did now, but moving house, always a bit stressful. And when you've been generations in a particular building, it's no longer bricks and mortar, it's much more personal than that. You are, it's a grieving time. And but I suppose we undertook it was something. This was our only available move. Did it in hope, and I'm running out of steam fast here. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. The congregation, does it still meet now in the those who are left in Preston?
No, my subsequent colleague, as I said, who came after me, when the North Lancs group dissolved, when I left it dissolved. It hadn't been a success, a colleague of mine took over the charge of my old Lancaster congregation and stretched his wings out to uphold and support the remnants still available of the Preston congregation, tried to resurrect it. It didn't really work, I'm afraid. And I've forgotten what your question was.
Sorry, are the congregation, do they now come to Chorley?
No, they don't. In fact, one lady who I was in quite close touch with at some time during this time, I've got that newspaper item from, because I thought, well, she was there, maybe she'll have some memory to share with you. And she was just, I think, very upset that there is nowhere for her now to go, because they're all much older. You know, they were elderly congregation then. So, apart from those who came to have their weddings or their christenings, but didn't often go any further than that, I guess it's been a dying cause.
Yeah. Maybe you could tell us then about your story of coming into ministry as a Unitarian minister.
Yes. Well, that was interesting insofar as I was a former apprentice navigating officer in the Merchant Navy, which role I lost due to a misunderstanding between myself and my GP, and the fact that I had been ill for such a time that my indentures were questioned. That left me high and dry. What would I do at 19? Having spent 3 years at pre-sea training school, then 3 years at sea on deep sea tankers. And I went to live in Kendal as a result of a holiday with some friends of mine. Fell in love with the place. Went back there to find myself and you, in the course of which I began to have all kinds of ideas, realised that much of our world's ills are basically at root religious. That is, it's what we believe about reality that causes us to behave the way we do. And I was about to go and conduct a witch hunt, vendetta, challenge to all the local ministers, when I happened to have been saved from that by applying for a job as a house father with Dr. Bernardo's homes, who at that time would only take, not exactly, they were willing to not take you if you were not a communicant Anglican, but they didn't want you if you were hostile. So there was a questionnaire on your religious beliefs. I had to answer that. In doing so, the chap I was working with, who happened to be the officer for mental health in South Westmoreland at the time, said to me, when I told him what I believed, he said, "Oh, well, you're a Unitarian then, aren't you?" And I said, "What's that?" Well, it so happened that he had been in the company of the current minister at the Unitarian Church in Kendal when they were both in Sheffield. He introduced me, I got to know the man, liked what I saw and felt, and changed. I did not go and attack all the clergy in Kendal. I resolved myself to attaching the church at Kendal. And there I conceived the notion of becoming a minister, because it seemed to me that working life involved a lot of willingness to accept part of you, your strength, your skill, your education, whatever, your commitment, but not the total of you. And it seemed to me the church was this place. This was the place where it accepted the totality of you. And that's what I wanted. And it seemed to me that this church was offering me that. So I conceived the notion of entering its ministry. I, for that reason, needed more support than was available, because you needed at least 2 ministers' congregations support. There was only one church in Lancaster. The nearest one was Preston in Lancashire, which I couldn't commute between. But it was a lot easier to go to London, where my home was, and they were more plentiful there, so I can go back there, get more involved, and see what this movement was. And from there, I then came back to Stockport to find a mentor who could really help me resolve the deep division and dilemma I had about this option, and was with him for almost 10 years before I eventually made the step and went into college and became qualified. Had a short ministry on the Pennines before coming to this North Lancs group, where I stayed for 11 years.
Whereabouts is the Unitarian College?
Manchester. We have 2 colleges. Actually, we have 3. One in Carmarthen, one in Oxford, one in Manchester. The one in Oxford carries the name Harris now Manchester College, Oxford, because it set off in Manchester. And because it moved, it went to London and went to York before settling in Oxford, we started a new college in Manchester, and that was for working class lads, because our movement accepts that the ordinary common man, that God speaks to us all basically, not just then and there and all done and dusted. He speaks to us now through you and I, and you have a part of that message open to you through His Spirit, and that's what we try to capture. So we had this college in Manchester for that purpose. I went there. I had no great academic history, so I did a probationary year, then qualified to go on to the university course, and then carried on from there. And that's part of our ethos.
That's great.
Next question.
No, that's great. That's it.